because it has the potential to be more than just fun, I think it also must demand something of you in order for it to be so valuable. Because I think a lot of the meaning of a game comes from your personal sacrifice into the game, you know?
Okie dokie, and welcome to Games by Design, our podcast where we talk about video games and stuff. I'm Nick Dunlap, and I'm here as always with Zach Dunlap, my brother. Zach, would you say hello?
Hello.
Thanks. And Aaron Bone, my friend. Aaron, would you say goodbye?
Goodbye, but hello. It's great to be back.
Yeah, we got the full spectrum. Hope you enjoyed the episode.
That's a preview of what's to come at the end of the episode.
Yeah, now you know.
Ciao. I get aloha. That means both.
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Yeah.
Should have gone with that. Alrighty. Well, yeah. Welcome to Games by Design. We're back. We figured we'd take another crack at this and see how it goes. And we're excited to be here. We talk about video games, and that's what we're going to do today. A quick plug. Every month we play a game together, and we talk about it at the end of the month, or in the middle of the month, because our month might not be the same as the calendar month.
We have our own calendar.
Yeah. The Games by Design.
Do you use the Gregorian or the Games by Design calendar?
So yeah,
This is the Mayan calendar.
Yeah, we're cool like that. But we play a game every month, and we chat about it, and we invite and encourage the listeners to play along with us if they'd like. And the game this month is Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook Studios, released in 2016. It's a dark, scary fantasy role-playing game about dark dungeons. And we'll be playing that throughout the month. And then we'll be chatting about it at the end, just our experiences with that and whatnot. So we look forward to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'd like to join along, you're more than welcome. And yeah, so that is what we do. What we also do is share our experiences about video games that we've been playing and talk about game design and stuff. And that is where we're going to hop right into now. Zach, if you'd be kind enough to start us off, if you're willing. Would you tell us about
Sure.
Some of your experiences playing lately? And
Yeah, totally. You want me to jump into the note I had?
yeah, that would be wonderful.
My orange
I
note?
would like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I've been playing a few things lately, but one of them was so at least my wife, she grew up playing Fable. Which I had never actually done before, and so we got the anniversary edition on Steam recently, and so she could play it, and she played it, and I thought, hey, that looks kind of fun, and so I sat down to play it, and so it's like, you know, I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's like a fantasy, it's just fantasy role playing game action kind of a thing.
I've seen screenshots. That's about it.
I think I played like an hour of it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Far away in a distant
The
memory.
distant Mayan past.
Distant.
Yes, when we started going by the Mayan calendar, it was before that.
It was 1,000 years ago by our reckoning. We're very
Anyway,
old.
so basically neither of you guys have played.
Yes.
So I tried it out. I played a few hours of it, and so it's you know, it's like it's mostly focused on like the combat and the leveling, and it's a lot about like choice and consequence, and you basically choose to be either a good guy or a bad guy over the course of the game through the course of the decisions you make. It's pretty binary, but you know, it's like, yeah, it is an older game, so it's kind of, it's cool that it's different like that. You know? But one of the okay, so the thing is, you guys both know kind of how I play video games a bit, and it tends to be with, you know, a controller in one hand and a spreadsheet in the other one.
Yes,
That's accurate.
indeed.
Yeah. So it turns out there's a trading system. There's an economic system here in the game. Mm-hmm. So to make gold as it is, you can like buy goods from traders and then sell them to other traders depending on, you know, the supply and the demand, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's that little side mini kind of a thing. You can, like, as you move around the world of Albion, you buy from traders who are selling things at a low price, and then you sell them at a high price. You know?
Gotcha.
Basic Wall Street stuff.
Yeah.
But
but that's become the main game for you, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, it would have, except for here's what happened. So the way that this works is that the way that the supply and demand is determined is it's a lot of different factors, but one of the most important ones is that is supply, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So if the supply is high, then the prices are low. If there's a lot of things that the merchants can sell, then the prices are low. But if the supply is low, the prices are high. Basic economic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the way that but it's not like overall supply and demand. It's individual merchant supply and demand.
Oh.
So here's where that. So what that means is that the merchant will look at his own stock and he will say, I have 50, I don't know, whatever it is. I think it was perfumes that I discovered this on. So he has like perfumes you can like sell or buy them and then give them to young women and marry like 4 or 5 different women at the same time.
Nice.
It's hilarious. But
That's how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
If Crusader Kings has taught me anything, that is how you do it.
but so they look at their own. So he's like, okay, so I got like 50 perfumes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, since I got 50, that's quite a lot. I'll lower my prices so that it's really low, and so it's like drops down to like 10 or 20 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And then you buy them all at that low rate, and he's like, oh my gosh, I have no perfumes. They must be in really high demand. I must really need to buy them, so I'm gonna jack up the prices to like 120. And so because he has no perfumes, therefore he's like, oh no, supply is so short. and so then I'm like looking at his prices, and he's like, hey, do you want to sell me a bunch of perfumes for 120 a piece? And I'm like, yeah. And so I sell him these 50 perfumes back at this markup, and then he's like, whoa, I got so many perfumes. Hey, do you guys want to buy like a bunch of perfumes at like 20 or 37 or whatever? Like, yeah. And so we did this about 15 times. and so I had way more money within like 3 minutes than I could ever spend reasonably in this game. And that was my experience with the Fable trading economy. So I'm pretty sure it wasn't supposed to, like, that wasn't the concept originally, but like, so that's what happened. I thought that was funny.
Take advantage of a merchant dealing with memory loss.
I know. Yeah.
Drive him to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Sounds like a skit out of Airplane or something. That's so funny.
I know, right?
Yeah, really.
But so there was a kind of the interesting thing about the whole deal was that aside from just being really amused by it, I was also really disappointed. Because I was like, I was all gearing up for this fun, challenging economic thing, I wanted to track the merchant prices and try to figure out what governs supply and demand, and then try to deal with that,
Yeah.
because it's fun, and well, for me. And what happened was, I was like, well, so I had to think. I was like, do I want to like pretend that this exploit doesn't exist so that I can continue to engage with that mechanic? And I was like, but that is the mechanic. Like, I don't, I couldn't bring myself to pretend that wasn't the way the game works, Like, that's the way it was set up. And like, I knew it was kind of like a disappointment and everything, but like, it wasn't enough for me to pretend that it didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I,
Certainly.
Yeah. No, it is interesting because, unlike you, Zach, the way I play video games is almost I try to not do it in the most optimal, efficient way.
Yeah.
Or like I try to immerse myself in the world to play things, from a character perspective. And so I could see myself finding that in Fable and be like, well, this person obviously wouldn't go on his grand adventure and then spend half of it with this perfume guy. So like, I'm not going to do that. But that's me, just kind of artificially working around, what the game has laid out. Or, I don't know. Sometimes in games, like with RPGs, you have you know, if you're constantly changing out things based on stats, but you know, they don't look good.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know. I'm not gonna wear like just this jumbled armor because it has the highest numbers next to it, or like two higher than, you know, other things.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you have some games that are like, oh, but then you can also have a cosmetic option, so you could wear whatever you want, but then, you know, make it look cool. And it's like, well, that's kind of cheating, so I don't want to do that either. I'm just gonna sacrifice the stuff.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Like, don't give me everything.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I think it's kind of a fun challenge to be able to make that choice and say, no, I'm not gonna. I don't know. If I say I'm not gonna play the like efficient number game, I want that to be a challenge now, and like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm weird.
No, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely of the, you know, I'd rather not look stupid, even if it means that my armor's really, like, you know, bad stat wise. You know, like playing Dark Souls,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to wear that. But like, that's a game where it's arguably pretty important to make sure you're well equipped.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, I feel similarly.
I guess this kind of is connected to my sweet roll thing.
Mhm.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
the idea was like, look, if something doesn't have a mechanical function in the game, it's kind of like the Chekhov's gun of video games in my mind. Where it's like, look, if it doesn't serve some purpose, like, it's kind of meaningless to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I find it distracting and a little bit like illusion breaking almost, which is weird because, you know, it's like, yeah, of course I want it to like look cool and everything, but like if the decorations are just decorations, it feels kind of hollow, you know? I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we all chatted about that in that episode, talking about like how, and I think we're generally of the same mind that if it doesn't serve a purpose, yeah, just like you said, it's hollow. It's not gonna be really disappointing because food should be food. But when food is decorative, it's not food, and then you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? Because it doesn't behave like it does in real life.
Yeah. And I guess it also... Go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
Well, just again, like in my thing, I can appreciate like the little the cosmetics, the window dressing. You know, if they didn't have time to put in a full hunger system, but
Yeah.
still wanted you to interact with the, I don't know, food. Like I don't know. I can see, I don't know, them, I don't know, trying to reach a middle ground, or like I think we talked about this in the Skyrim thing too. Like a game, not every game can do everything or should have everything, or like every mechanic, or try to be everything at once. And so I think it's okay if a game chooses not to engage with something, but still allow, I don't know, some interaction with it. Like, I don't know, so long as that doesn't become, I don't know, like you find this hidden area and the only thing you find there is a sweet roll. Like I could see how that, you know, in the Skyrim example. But yeah, optional interaction, things to choose for, so long as the game has other mechanics. I don't know, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
But I can see, like, you're trying to optimize things, play with the mechanics. I can see how it could be frustrating.
Also, like,
Yeah, and that's really... Sorry, go ahead. Nick.
well, I mean, like that was the trading system in Fable, if I'm to understand. Like, you're supposed to buy stuff
Yeah.
and sell it at a markup, and the easiest way to do that, like, I mean, they probably didn't consider, you know, you're gonna sell it to the same guy at a markup, like, but that is the most intuitive, like, well, obviously it's right here, you know, like, it's so, and it's a system the game's already asking you to engage with, and then it does something really, you know, dunderheaded like that, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really, I guess, what bothers me about the sweet roll thing too, is that, you know, if I'm playing a game like The Last of Us and there's like items scattered around that you don't interact with, like, I'm not offended by it. You know, it's like, oh yeah, there might even be like, yeah, like a refrigerator full of food or something, but like, you know, it does, because that is clearly just there to, like, you know, sell the world, and like the game mechanics are not asking you to engage with them.
yeah,
But in a game like Skyrim with its sweet rolls, where it's like, yeah, here's food, you can pick it up and eat it, and it does nothing. Or in this case, Fable with its trading system, which, yeah, you're supposed to, and it encourages you and like gives you a tutorial on it and everything, and then it takes all of about 5 seconds to realize that exploit exists. And so then it's like that's what I think really kind of gets me is it's like,
yeah,
it's like, look, if it's not gonna be there, then don't put it there, like just make it a decoration, just pretend that it's there.
It's kind of like it's a little half baked, a little like it's the beginning of something, but it would have been better if it had never really been done at all.
Yeah.
Well, this actually brings me to another thing.
Yeah, totally.
About that kind of came to me
sure.
in Fable is that, you were just saying, Nick, that like, it feels like it's almost better if it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I'm playing Fable and I'm realizing there's actually a few things like this where it's like, there's so many mechanics and systems going on that are like, it's so ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are kind of similarly like, it seems like they bit off a little bit more than they could really, chew.
Yeah.
Right.
And get smoothed out. But the thing is, like, the fact that they were like trying is actually super compelling to me. Like the fact that there are all of these systems in this game that like some of them aren't super successful, but like the fact that there's so many things there that they were like trying to do and simulate, like,
Yeah.
like that makes it super interesting to me, and I like want to try it out, even if there's gonna be like bummers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's a common thing with open world games, is that because these games need to make their world feel lived in, feel lifelike, feel interesting to explore, I think they tend to add little microsystems to the games, the things that you can engage with, but oftentimes they're not fleshed out enough to be that interesting to engage with.
Yeah, Aaron, you had some thoughts on that. That kind of tied into some of your notes, right? On the kind of open world.
Yeah, actually, kind of a similar thing. I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey the other day, and Ubisoft, they're the kings of making big, empty, open well, not empty, but the kind of worlds that look pretty, but don't have a lot of depth of interaction with. But kind of in an interesting contrast to that, I was just kind of exploring in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I found these cool volcanic islands, and like the something about the music in that area was just like really interesting. Like it was so different from what I experienced in the rest of the game. Like it almost sounded like something out of A Witcher. And aside from one story quest on one of these islands, and there was like 4 of them, they were pretty empty, except for like a few resources to pick up. But I found myself enjoying just walking around. Like I turned off the HUD, which in Assassin's Creed Odyssey means like nothing pops up on the screen ever. So you pick up an item, you have no idea what it is. It's really interesting. It's like the design is like, you don't want a HUD, you don't get it. It's like, okay. But anyway, turned off the HUD and was just like listening to music and just walking around and enjoying just the beautiful, design of the world. And it was just a nice moment that, again, kind of contrast what we're talking about. Like I was able to appreciate just the simple aesthetic of what was going on and like the music and kind of, I don't know, tell my own story for a little bit without, shepherding from boring side quest to boring side quest and try to fit it together. Because that is something, I don't know if you wanted to go into some of the narrative issues that open world games can have, but a lot of times, because there's so many different quests you can choose and so many, different time when you choose a story quest, it can feel very disjointed and jarring and, not exactly organic. And so to just have this, I don't know, little moment where it's just like, oh, I'm just going to run around and not pay attention to things, but still enjoy it somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. Well, I would love to dive into what you were talking about with the narrative and stuff like that, because I know you have some thoughts prepared on that. But Zach, were there any other? I mean, did that wrap up your thoughts, or was there more you wanted to share there?
Yeah, no, that does kind of cover it. I'm really fascinated to kind of get into the. Aaron just mentioned something again that makes me curious about the way he plays games versus the way I do, because I like, I don't know, I don't bring my I can't really bring myself to slow down, turn off the HUD, and just look at stuff most of the time.
Yeah. There's
anyway, but I want to hear more about that. That's
absolutely, and I
Well, oftentimes I just want to get like a cool screenshot to use as my wallpaper. So,
I usually play games on too low settings for that to be a viable option. But
that's fair too.
Yeah, but yeah, let's go.
And I want to add too. I was thinking too about. I said I don't optimize games. If a game gets to the point where the pacing starts to feel like a grind, or like getting money becomes a problem, I will totally abuse a system just to not have to worry about it. So if I was playing Fable and it's just like, oh, this game would be better if I didn't have to worry about money.
You do that.
Easy solution.
Yeah. Maybe it was intentional. The designer's a genius. Guys, we're looking at it all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a system that was a pain to begin with, it was like, I'll sure, all right.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and dive into your thoughts on the narrative and the open world stuff, Aaron, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think a balance that open world games have to reach, and I think very few do it, is to have a story, that is engaging enough for you to want to engage with it, but that is free enough that you don't feel penalized for doing something different, other than a story quest, right? I think, I think The Witcher 3 accomplishes this by having interesting side quests, and also that those side quests are usually part of your character's job, and so it's things that he would do otherwise. I think Breath of the Wild gets away with it because you don't remember anything, and so you have to, figure that out and solve things. But we've talked about, some issues with Skyrim where it's like, okay, yeah, this is this world-ending threat, and you can just totally blow it off the entire game. But another interesting issue I discovered with it, both in Assassin's Creed Odyssey and also in Sekiro, another game I've been playing, is that sometimes, like, the game will try to add story elements. I don't know, try to make the story more engaging in its moments and try to connect things, but because it was different than how you approach the game, it just doesn't make sense. So, for example, I was in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I had this quest to, take this character from one island to sail to another one. And that was like the main story quest. And I had done some side quests around. I'd done some exploring. It's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on story for a while. Well, going from taking the person into the ship, into the island, took maybe 5 minutes. And then I get there in this cutscene, and the characters are talking to each other. It's like, wow, that was quite a journey. Like, what an adventure we've had. Like, I didn't think we'd make it here. It's like, it wasn't hard at all. Like,
please, I was off killing giant spirit boars.
I didn't take it. Yeah. And there were so many opportunities in the game where it's like, I don't know, it's like almost like open world games. I almost wish like the narrative would give me permission to do side quests so that it can like feel organic. And that was an opportunity like where if I would have done something with that, I would have been like, oh wow, like that feels better. Yeah, I spent all this time wasted, but now it doesn't feel like it wasted because they had this grand journey. But because I was trying to follow the story, it then made the story less rewarding.
That's so interesting.
Really funny.
And then it can also be an issue if, depending on the order that you do something, which is something I ran into Sekiro. And now Sekiro is a From Software game, and From Software, they did Dark Souls, they did Bloodborne, and these games are largely environmental storytelling and kind of the story, being told, and like the items you pick up, the places you find, the bosses you fight, and it kind of all fits together in a puzzle. But it can be disjointed. With Sekiro, it's a little different. They have cutscenes, they have characters. You're playing an actual character and not just some horrific creation that you made in the character creator, who looks dead most of the time. Like, there's actual personalities to the characters. And for a good portion of the game, the story is a bit more linear, and so it works with that. But I got to this point where basically reached a multiple fork in the road, and it's like, oh, I could go 4 different ways, and I went one way and met a boss that I found was too difficult for me to, take on at that moment. I was like, okay, well, this is too tricky. All these other different ways I can go, so I'm gonna go and see if I can, similar to Dark Souls, you can get some upgrades and things based on people that how many people you kill and save up stuff. So it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna check out these other areas and then I'll come back to the boss. Well, after checking the other areas and kind of finding, they seemed like a lot more disjointed from how the story had been going. And I get to the area and like, why are you here? It's like, I have no idea why I'm here. This lady pointed in that direction and said I should go there, which again in Dark Souls, like that's very common.
That's a really valid reason.
Yeah, it's like, oh, if an NPC says anything, it's like, oh, that's the most direction I'm going to get in this game. So naturally, I took these different paths and I ended up, getting through these levels and they weren't that much more challenging. So it's like, okay, this is probably the intended path. But then I go back to, the boss I was fighting and kind of, it seemed around the central conflict of the game. And then after I beat that boss, I have this interaction with this character who's then telling me to go to all these different places I already went to. And there was a moment in the game where I was talking to a merchant and he tells me about this item that I should get. And my character says, hey, guess what, dummy? I already have that item. You just wasted my time. I was like, oh, great. Okay, the game knows how to handle, the non-linearity. But in this story moment, when it's like, how am I need to go to these places to help, save this situation. He's just like, wait, where is that? Okay, how do I get there? What am I looking for? It's like, you've already been there. And so then again, I feel bad as a player for like, oh, like because I didn't play this the right way, the story, isn't as rewarding because I don't know. I thought I was being smart in how I played this. You keep banging your head against the wall. It's like, oh, try another wall to bang your head against, and then maybe that one will crack, and then you can go and get through that one. And the pieces there, it's like, oh, this is actually a pretty interesting story. And again, especially for a From Software game, like it's got some really interesting threads. I would have really enjoyed this if I had, I don't know, built to this dramatic moment. If I had got to the area and I was like, okay, like I know why I'm here. I'm going to go do this, and this will bring it all together rather than just wandering around some new zone, fighting guys and, doing the Dark Souls thing. Yeah. So it's I don't know that again, I think because I try to, immerse myself in the game, and every game I'm like, I want to see the story. I want to like, be with the characters. I want, that adventure, that experience. It really takes me out of it when the game kind of punishes you story-wise for doing things differently.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That's so interesting that. See, I've never that you run into that problem with Sekiro, because like part of what I appreciate about Dark Souls is that like it kind of has this aimless wandering sense to it. I don't know. Whenever I'm playing the game, I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'll go over here. I guess I'll go over here, and it feels like it's built for that. But it sounds like once they give the story a little more structure, all of a sudden, all of that aimless wandering feels really, I guess, at odds with that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Because I mean, to be honest, like it's not that big of a problem. Like I guess I ended up meeting an NPC that I wouldn't have met otherwise, and like the game irons out. But again, just for like my headspace of like, oh, like this is an interesting story. I want to engage with it in the best way. In my attempt to do that, not getting a more watered down version. I don't know. I think that's the thing. If I like didn't care about the story and was just wandering around, it's fine. But it's like, oh, like this is actually interesting, and I want to like, see these narratives, highs and lows that it's throwing at me. Yeah. So I think most people probably won't even have an issue.
Yeah,
with
but
it.
but you're trying to engage with this story, like potentially more than many other people who play this game. And in your attempts, I think the irony here is like in your attempts to engage with the story better, you're getting a worse story. than people
Yeah.
who might be engaging with it a little more half-heartedly or a little less intentionally.
Because I think another way that open world games can kind of guard the player around the narrative is by making certain areas more difficult than others, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot Ubisoft games do this with like leveling their areas, which has its own issues, but at least it can, when you get here, like the game knows you're at a certain point that it can divulge certain things to you. And so, run into an area, it's like, oh, this guy's tough. Must be a thing to get to later. But again, Dark Souls logic, that doesn't always work out.
It's just all tough.
Yeah.
This guy's tough, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah. I hope that this isn't too off track, but what you were saying, Aaron, reminded me of something that I read once from Soren Johnson. Do you guys mind if I share that with you?
Please.
Oh, of course.
So
I mean, I don't mind, but yeah, go.
Yes, of course I mind.
Of course I mind. How dare you?
Don't you know we're talking about Sekiro here?
No, so I remembered, and this was kind of like what you were saying too, Nick, about how that where it gets to be at odds with itself a little bit. So he's specifically talking about strategy games, because that's the kind of games that. So Soren Johnson's a game designer, I should say. He's worked on, I think he was the lead design for Civilization 4, and he runs his own studio now, Mohawk Studios. They've done like Off-World Trading Company and some stuff like that. But it's strategy type stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's got like a blog that I've read a lot and stuff like that. So he talks about the relationship between stories and gameplay, a little bit. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that his says that this is one of his like 7 deadly sins of strategy games is what he calls it. And he says that the worst thing that happens is when a story gets put somewhere where it shouldn't be. And he says, and his opinion is basically like, and basically a story shouldn't be in a strategy game is his opinion. And he says that the reason for that is that like the story of a strategy game is the game, and it's the experiences that you go through because through your, quest to conquer or whatever. And he talks about also how like the reason that it becomes a problem with the story is that often it becomes the game will break its own rules, the own like established strategy rules or whatever to make sure that certain story beats happen. And it can be and it can kind of start causing these contrivances and these weirdnesses, and it's like, well, I could have done that earlier. It just barred me from doing it for no reason other than it wasn't supposed to happen yet, stuff like that. And like I know that we're talking about Sekiro, which is supposed to be more of a narrative thing. And I don't think that I completely agree with him that all stories should be. Well, I mean, he's not saying that games shouldn't have stories. He's just saying that like. He's saying some games shouldn't have stories, and I don't know exactly what I think about that, but I do think that he's got a point that like story and gameplay can really have problems together sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No, he's saying basically the gameplay shouldn't be compromised for the story, or like the consistency of the game shouldn't be adjusted to tell a story.
Yeah, and I know that's not exactly really what you were saying, but it's what it made me think of, and but I think there's some overlap there, and I think that there's something to be extracted from both of these together. I think.
No, I think that's valid because I think From Software got really good at making one particular game, and it was great, and they were able to really hone in on it, and then adding something to that maybe wasn't designed in the first place to be added to it caused some issues. So
yeah, maybe so. And like honestly, like I don't really want to only ever get Dark Souls 10 out of them. Like I don't want that to be like,
Oh no, yeah.
And so I'm glad that they try it out, and I'm really like I think that the first few attempts at anything are going to be a little rougher, and like honestly Sekiro is far from rough, like all of their games.
Oh,
are
it's
are
an
amazing.
excellent game.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the fact that it is an excellent game, and I was disappointed in this moment. If it wasn't
Yeah.
a great game, I'd be like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
But
There's like this. There's this. It kind of ties into what you were saying, Zach, about like there's this ambition, like even if not on all the elements or like fitting together perfectly, like it's really nice to see when there's more. Because like I don't want to see Dark Souls 10 out of them, which is why I'm glad they've got their new game, which is like open world and they're doing all sorts of crazy new stuff with it. And I'm like, great. Like I don't know if it's all going to be good, but I don't know that I really care. Like. Obviously, it'd be great if you got a perfect game, but I'll settle for iteration. I'll settle for games slowly getting better, and I appreciate the ambition because it can be really. I feel like I get bored when a game is just about one thing. I don't know, maybe it's a little tangential, but like I'll play. I think it's a reason I have a hard time getting into a lot of smaller titles, like simpler games, is because it's like, oh, this game is just about racing. Whereas this game, this AAA racing game, or this big budget racing game, is also about actually racing games is a terrible example because I don't play racing games, but
nobody plays racing games.
Or like here's a game. It's a Zelda-like game. Yeah, it has combat like Zelda. Well, the combat is not what I like about Zelda. I like everything about Zelda. Like how I like all of the different elements, And so when someone's, when this is just a combat game, oh, well, I'd rather play the game that has combat and fun stories and these goofy side quests and these interesting dungeons and these fun bosses and these fun characters and this fantastic music. And there's so much going on. And I would much rather play a game with more. Like I know there's this design idea of design by subtraction that Fumito Ueda, who made Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, is famous for. And I like that sometimes, but it's only sometimes. Like I think it works really well for Shadow of the Colossus and Ico. But if you aren't 100% there for riding horse and stabbing giant monster, that is all that is in that game. And so like you can only engage with that. I appreciate it when games are feature rich, even when those features aren't all fleshed out. I recognize that is very tangential, but I think it kind of connects to what Zach was saying.
No, I mean, that's basically counter to the point that Zach brought up earlier, where I think that we were bringing up that these big games have to throw so many features in them that they're not fleshed out. And you're saying you like the features because it gives you a different option if you get bored of something.
I think so. I think I'm inclined towards that, yeah.
I mean, like, my favorite game is Crusader Kings.
Yeah.
So.
I don't understand half of that game, but I love it.
Yeah. Well, and it's another... It's just so cool to me to be playing... I was playing Mountain Blade Warband like last year or something, and I was so just delighted to discover consistently that there was more to do. And like there was so many more systems and ideas to interact with, and like it was like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't know you could become like the king. I didn't know you could start your own faction. That's the coolest thing and like and then and there's a ton of like economic stuff, and there's the battles themselves, and there's and there's the politics, and it's like, wow. And like I was happy with like the the one or two things I knew about, but like the more I discover, the more it's like, whoa, this is great, and like, I did mention earlier, like it didn't always get fleshed out, but at the same time I was like, I don't care that much that it's not perfect. I'm just happy that they're they have the ambition. It's kind of like a shoot for the what do they say? Shoot for the moon and land in the stars or whatever, which doesn't make any sense astronomically. shoot for the mountains and land in the, I don't know, halfway up the mountain, the foothills. Yeah.
Splat against a rock. At least you're there.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of my problem. I think I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna mention the Elder Scrolls, but it's kind of the problem I have with I don't know, like Skyrim and Oblivion even versus like Morrowind and the stuff from before with Daggerfall and Arena and everything. It's like, man, they were trying to do so much more with the earlier ones, you know.
Yeah.
And when I say more, I don't mean like cosmetically, because obviously, like, you know, they're putting so much more into, and this is a lot of games, I think, in the AAA sphere especially, where it's like, yeah, we're trying to make it like cinematic and fun and almost like a movie is what it feels like a lot of games are trying to be, you know. And like, but at the sacrifice of like ambitious gameplay systems, you know. And
Yeah.
and I find that disappointing more than anything, and it makes me feel sad.
Yeah, there's this kind of like it's kind of gloomy to think about that trend, because it's like, what about my Crusader Kings? And like, you know, those games still happen, but like
Right.
but like it can be, there's still people doing that, but like I think that the trend in the industry, I don't think anyone will be surprised or disagree, you know, is cinematic. It's big, it's explosive and exciting and pretty, and it's got to be so pretty, and that comes at the cost of a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And it is so pretty, and they are so cinematic, and like I love The Last of Us, and I love, you know, God of War, the new 3 years ago God of War, and I'm excited for the next one, and like, you know, Spider-Man and all this stuff, but like, yeah,
Red Dead.
yeah. Red Dead, like, yeah,
It's cool.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's, I mean, if you're like me, I don't know, it kind of depends on my mood, what I play. And sometimes I'm in the mood for a big Ubisoft game, you know, big dumb world to just explore and have fun with. And, you know, it's like, oh, I can hunt, I can do this, I can fight, I can, you know, whatever. And sometimes I'm in the mood for a grand strategy game, or sometimes in the mood for, you know, a more challenging experience. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have, you know, I mean, there is the concern, that the more, you know, that these AAA titles keep coming in and making money, that, you know, there might be this homogenization of games. But I think so long as you still got great indie developers and people still pushing the envelope, I think we'll always have access to both types of games.
Yeah, I think so too.
I agree.
I'm not actually really worried that they're going to stop making games I like. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Like, they might not get the support and the money that they deserve, but if you enjoy them, like, you enjoy it.
Yeah.
If I can segue off of the idea of like big games versus small games and single mechanics, it kind of ties into a thought that I had prepared. If you guys are cool with this, shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, because Aaron, you mentioned sometimes you do just want something simple. Sometimes you just want the dumb fun. Sometimes you just want the big. And like, I play Burnout Paradise. There's a racing game I play. I play Burnout Paradise just because it is fun and fast. And like, that is, I sit down and I play Burnout Paradise, and it's fun and fast. And nothing in that game
wreck into stuff.
Yeah, and nothing in that game stops you from going fun and fast. Like, that is all there is, which I appreciate. I was playing. So my thought is kind of this. Is that like, I noticed that when I'm playing a game like that, and as soon as it stops delivering, if it ever stops delivering on that core experience, even for a moment, like, I often disengage and like do not want to return to it. And here is, this is kind of a, this ties in, sort of a similar experience, but I was playing Control, the game by Remedy, in like 2018, 2019, something like that. And I'm playing this game, and Control has a fun story, I think. I don't know. Gotten pretty far and not a whole lot has happened. But it's compelling enough. And it's mostly what the game is, though, is running around and shooting stuff and using psychic powers. And so I was, and that is mostly what I've been playing it for, is like I sit down, kind of turn my brain off a little bit, throw crap around and look at the fun physics. So I was playing it, and I got to this boss that was pretty tough. It wasn't the toughest. It had nothing on, like, you know, Dark Souls, but it was still like hard and made me want to have to play intentionally. And me playing with my, I just want to throw stuff around and not think too hard, wasn't totally thrilled that I was having a hard time. And and so I failed a few times, like 3. which wasn't a ton, but then there were really long load times on my computer for every checkpoint. And there was this really long corridor that I had to run back to fight the boss. And enemies would occasionally randomly spawn in that corridor that would take my health down, so I'd have less of a good chance of fighting the boss next time. And it just got really tedious. I still have not beaten that boss, and I have little motivation to go back and do that. But I was enjoying the game like quite a bit. I'm pretty far in it, and I have enough investment that I'd like to see it through. Like, I have enough investment in the story. Like, I care enough. I have enough unanswered questions. But when I think of like the checkpoint and the load times and the difficulty, I just don't want to go back to it. And this is so like I think about it often. Because it's like unfinished in my brain. I'm like, I gotta go back and do that because I like seeing things through. But there's other games that I literally just forget I was playing altogether. Like I was playing Far Cry 3 and I was having a grand old time with it, and then it disappeared. Like I just forgot I was playing it. And I'm pretty sure it's still on my computer, but just vanished from my mind. And I was just thinking about like quitting games and what makes me stop a game, and I wonder if you guys have similar experiences. Like what causes I'm just the idea I'm throwing around in my brain is like, when do I put it down a game unfinished? What makes me pick it back up or not pick it back up? Like, and I think that one of the things can be, like I mentioned earlier, this idea of like, as soon as it stops delivering on that one thing I'm there for, I'm out. So like that's definitely a thing. But then there's other games I see through that are really not that good, but I see them through anyway. And so why do I do this? Why do I like quit some games that I'm really enjoying over a little thing? I just wondered what experiences, if you guys had similar experiences like putting games down, picking them back up again or not.
Oh, absolutely. I've actually recently just kind of started cleaning games from my computer that I just kind of were saving for a rainy day. You know, it's like, oh, maybe I'll get back to this game at some point. And it's like, okay, like if I feel like playing this game again, I can reinstall it. But right now, like, I don't know. It gave me a bit more peace to just focus on the games I was actually playing.
Yeah.
But so many times. I was playing actually one game, Persona 4 was a game. I had played a little bit of Persona 5 when my brother had a PlayStation, and I was like, oh, this is a really fun game. I wonder if any of these are on the PC. And I saw Persona 4, and I played it. It's like, wow, this is a really good game. It's a really unique game. It's different for me. I'm engaged with it. I played it for like 3 or 4 hours one night and had a good time with it. Have not touched it since. And that was like 6 months ago. And there's so many games that fall into it. I think, and I don't know, like I say, I play a lot of games based on mood. I just maybe never got the mood to play that type of game again, or I got in the habit of playing another game, or a game that was, I don't know, clearer where the finish line was, and so I was like, okay, I can finish this game. And once I finish this game, then I could play some other games. Also, I definitely fall into the trap of, here's all these games I haven't played, but what's a new game that I can also play?
Yeah.
It's
well,
and I think at least for me a little bit, I had to give myself permission to accept that it's also okay to not finish a game. Yeah. That if I play this game, I had this good experience with it, I got something out of it, I have this awareness of this game, this type of game, I can carry that with me. It's okay if I didn't finish it, or if I didn't finish the series of games that it was in, or my initial intent with it. Like, as we talked about, the experience, the moments we have with games, I think are valuable, in their own right.
Yeah, man, wow. Yeah, it's so interesting. I was gonna say, I think that the majority of the games that we have done for our highlights, I've not actually finished. Like, I mean, I don't know how you finish Hades.
You've got to finish Outer Wilds. I will, if you don't.
I know. Yeah. Well, I've gone back to it, and actually, it's Outer Wilds that makes me think about this next comment, which I'm gonna make, which is,
I'm trembling in anticipation.
Yeah. It was a few weeks ago. I sat down and I was like, I was thinking about this podcast and we are talking about getting back and doing it again. And I was thinking about the games we were playing. And that was what I really liked about it, was that I was trying new games that I didn't usually play, and it was the fact that we were doing it for the podcast that got me playing it over and over again, Like, I was like, oh, I gotta go. Because, like, with Hades, at least for the beginning of Hades, I mentioned this, like, it just didn't work for me for the first few hours. But because we were doing it for the podcast, I did, a few sessions of it. And then after that, it just clicked. And it was like, holy cow, I love this game.
Yeah. I still play Hades.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Yeah, I finally got to the credits, like, last week.
Yeah.
But it's that one and Outer Wilds. And, Something that, first of all, an interesting point. I think that what I'm in the mood for can be somewhat malleable, if that makes sense. It's almost like I don't have the activation energy kind of a thing, at first. But like a lot of the time, I think the motivation follows the initial action, of starting to play the game or playing. Okay, well, I'll just play for 30 minutes or whatever, and then. It's really funny because I'm talking about this like I'm talking about work. Like this is the way people talk about like how to be productive. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, well, just start. Just do like the smallest. Just do like 10 minutes, and once you've done 10 minutes, you'll feel like doing more. And that's the way it is for me with the game too. Because like I sit down and I play Outer Wilds for 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I can't stop now. Like I gotta keep going.
Yeah.
So
I think. I feel similarly, like, and I think that having like these game highlights that we do on this podcast helps me to try new things and to have really good experiences. Because I think a lot of my favorite gaming experiences aren't games that I played purely for fun. It was often a compulsion, like I really got to know what happens, even though it's hard, or that was what The Last of Us was, actually. Like I was playing when I played The Last of Us, I had like just these 2-hour sessions at night that I was playing because I had like a limited window. It was always at night, and so I was always terrified. But I was like, but I gotta know what happens next. And so it was like often a distinctly unpleasant, like experience, or had unpleasant moments. But like there was games, are more than just fun. The Witcher was similar. Like sometimes The Witcher is really upsetting, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do more of this, but like I gotta, I don't know, not just fun. Games are more than fun.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, we've talked about quite a bit about video games reflecting life, and the moments I think we remember most in life aren't always the easiest. Chillest, happiest moments. It's we struggled, we overcame something, or sometimes just something bad, but it left an impact, it left an impression. And I think it's those games that leave an impression that do stick with you, and that at least for me is like, oh, like that's one of my favorite games now, because I remember it, because I remember what it was like playing with it. I remember struggling to get through it, playing the first Dark Souls and spending months on a single boss and getting through. But now I look back at that game, it's like, oh man, like I learned that game so well, like so much of that. Like I can just imagine every aspect of that moment, and it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, no, I feel the same way. Like the Witches of Crookback Bog, man.
Oh my gosh.
That made my skin crawl, and I was like, I don't know if I want to keep playing this game right now, because like I was like in The Witcher, but like that, or similarly playing The Last of Us, and like there's parts of that where it's like, I don't want to watch my gizzard get ripped out again, man. I just that's just too much, But because I finished it, I don't know. Yeah, no, it became. It was the struggle itself that gave it the value, Like if it had been just a Pokemon Snap of video games, which has its challenge, but I think you're right, Nick. It's not just fun. Like fun is fine, nothing wrong with fun, but like also like, but there's some potential here to like, and we talked about this before,
Yeah.
you know, challenge and upsetting, disturbing content and stuff. But like, it has the. I think because it has the potential to be more than just fun. I think it also, at the same time, and probably to a very related degree, must demand something of you in order for it to be so valuable. Because I think a lot of the meaning of a game comes from your personal sacrifice into the game. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think also there are some games that like, and I think you talked about this a little earlier about, I don't know, games trying to add something that like doesn't need to be added or like doesn't work. But I don't know, I've seen this like some dumb fun games will like add like some gratuitous violence or some like dark depressing moment to like try to get there. And you know, and like totally not working. Like I was playing the Tomb Raider remake last night, and funny, it was another game. I was like, okay, I played like an hour of this. I didn't like it. My brother said it gets really good. I'll try it, see what happens. I ended up playing like 4 hours, but just because it was kind of this nonstop fun dumb action. But man, that's a game that just loves to beat you up as a player. Like, not with its difficulty, but just with like, oh, if you are sliding down this slippery slope, if you hit this wooden panel, we're going to show you getting impaled through the face with it. Or like, you know, you fall and you're just covered in blood. And it's just like, okay, like, that's not really adding anything, because these characters are really dumb and this story is really dumb. And so trying to be serious right now, like, it's just, you just come across as like edgy and not, I don't know.
Yeah, a little try-harded maybe.
Yeah.
And it was kind of things like, well, I don't want to mess up because like I don't want to see my face get impaled by the spike anymore. But like, not in a fun like, oh, I guess I have to face it. Just like, oh, come on, just get past this dumb part.
Yeah.
You know, can I bring it back to the finishing thing a little bit?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess we may not have a ton of time left, huh?
I think we could touch on one more thought.
Okay. Well, I was. This is a little unrelated, but kind of related. Well, it's related. Anyway, so the point is, like, I was playing a. You guys remember we were playing Don't Starve Together the other day together?
Yeah.
And we were like, well, and we were pretty new to it, and we're like, well, but we wanted to move on to we wanted to play Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, well, I want to like wrap this up, but like it's an open-ended, never-ending kind of survival game. Like, how do you end that? You know? And like. And that was, unfortunately, what happened was it came to a really natural endpoint, as many roguelike survival games do, with dying. And completely unexpected. And I was really grateful that it happened, actually, funnily enough. Which kind of got me thinking about, you know, like, well, at some point, I'm going to be good enough at this game that it won't be able to kill me, you know? And, like, then what do I do? Then how do I end, you know? And I don't know, maybe there is an end point in Don't Starve Together, but I know that there are many, many games that do not have one, because it's really just, you know, it goes on forever. And, I mean, Nick and I have already talked about this quite a bit with like Skyrim and other similarly open-ended RPGs that let you do things, you know, till the end of time. It like, there's no good place to stop. And so ultimately what you're going to have to do is just say, well, that's good as anything, I guess, which feels like the middle of your quest or your adventure or your life in this world, you know? And
it's kind of just like quitting the middle of any other game. Like it's about the same feeling of, well, I guess I'm tired of this now.
Yeah. And so like, I don't know, like, do you guys think that open-ended and when I say open-ended, I don't mean like physically like open world, but like, stuff that like stuff like strategy games and simulations and things like like the Elder Scrolls,
Yeah.
which like is meant for you to play it basically forever. There's no end point,
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you guys think that that's
Yeah.
ever gonna be anything more than ultimately unsatisfying? Like, are they all doomed to just be eventually,
That is a fantastic question.
I think the people who, I don't want this might be a little harsh, but I don't know. I think the people that like only play the forever games, or like, I don't know, log 1,000 hours in Skyrim, are the type of people who don't care about that kind of closure on things. And the people who do will be playing other games to find satisfying. I don't know. And I don't know. Maybe it's another thing with life. Like, we never get great closure on everything with life, and just move on.
Well, we die.
We do die. Yeah. And you don't
We
die in
die of
Skyrim.
it, but I mean, you could die very suddenly, You could
That's a
you
good
could
point.
die
Yeah.
without, rapid. Technically, we died and don't starve. That was the whole point, right? We starved.
But that was
Or froze.
that was satisfying though. Like, that's the thing. Like, it was an ending, even if it wasn't the best
Yeah.
ending. Like, it was
sudden.
the story
Yeah.
is over. Like, we were ready to move on, and the game gave us an exit point. Whereas Skyrim doesn't have an exit point. You can't say like,
It's an end of Skyrim.
yeah, but like the game keeps going. Like, you can still play.
Yeah.
I guess it's
I mean, it's
kind
like,
of like
I don't know.
I'm thinking about like maybe more of the more open-ended like strategy simulation kind of stuff. Like Skyrim does have like a story that you finish, and like
Yeah, that's
there
true.
is that whole.
Like, once you,
But like,
yeah.
I'm thinking, well, I don't know, some of them give you like the chance to retire, which is interesting. I kind of like that. Where like Mountain Blade or Sid Meier's Pirates or something like that, where it's like, you live your life and then at some point you get old and tired and retire,
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I like that because it lets you
Yeah.
kind of reflect and look back, even if it's like it's not like all of your story threads got tied up and everything's all super satisfying, like a well-crafted book or something. But at least like it's like, okay, it's over. Now I can look back and reflect and say that was a pretty good run, and then move on to something else.
Yeah. You and the game both recognize the ending. Like, instead of it just being one of you. Like, it's this like, and there's some closure and satisfaction in that. Like, this is like, there's this way of feeling like this is the way it was supposed to be, instead of feeling like, well, I guess I'm not done, and I feel like they want me to keep playing, but I'm done.
I'm gonna pretend that the game ended.
Yeah.
And I will say that is the benefit. Nick, you talked about like cinematic
Yeah.
games, like something that The Last of Us has, that's something like Uncharted, or I assume even Tomb Raider, is that you just follow the story to the end, and there's an end, and you have the end. It's like, oh, like that's a good, maybe there's follow-up games you can continue the story, but there's an end. But these another thing with like these big, large open world AAA games, especially nowadays, the people who make these games don't want people to stop playing them. Because, either they're microtransactions or just, continuing to sell the game, or, keep it going, keep it, live service or whatever. And so it is, advantageous to these developers to not have an ending.
Yeah.
Which is kind of frustrating. But again, like, I think, I don't know, there will be games where you can get that closure, and there'll be other games you just kind of have to accept for what they are. I don't know.
I guess what I just really like. I guess my takeaway here is that I just really like having an option to put an end to it one way or another. Whether it's a survival game where you die, or a game where you finally achieve the whole goal of the thing and it's over, or whether you can retire and be like, okay, well, it's over. You hit a button and it's like, happily ever after. How's it end? Done.
Yeah, it's really nice to have closure. Which, like, yeah. Sorry, Aaron, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just kind of laughing because I was just imagining you're playing this like huge 100-hour open world game and you're just like, I'm sick of this game, and you just jump off a cliff or something. It's like, they're dead. It's done. I'm gonna make my own ending.
Yeah. Well, I always like those ones where I like the ones where something I like about the roguelike genre, or roguelike mechanic specifically of playing until you die, is that it's like, oh, that was a good run, I can now. And a lot of games have like a hardcore mode where it's like, you play until you die, and something like that.
Yeah.
Even Minecraft has something like that, which it's kind of like the ultimate in the open-ended, never-ending game, which I also love, notably. Like, yeah. Of course, in my mind, it's like, well, yeah, no, there is an end point in this. It's when I physically die in real life.
That's kind of the way I feel about Minecraft too.
Then you pass it on to your children, and they can continue the world.
Yeah, leave some history behind.
Yeah, and that's also a game that is constantly growing and changing. And so I feel like if there's more to engage with, there's nothing wrong with staying with the game. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with staying with the game if there isn't. Like, but it's exciting to like have. Yeah. It's good. There's more. There's more game. Like, there's more game to play, whether it's the same game or a different game. And there's just a lot of really fantastic stuff out there. And it's nice to be able to, even if you have a dissatisfying experience, go on to something else. We do have to wrap up because we're pretty much at time. But thank you guys for all of your thoughts. And I really enjoyed this discussion, and I look forward to doing it again next time. But and thank you all for listening, those who are listening. And yeah, so toodles, I guess. Farewell.
Toodles.
And we'll see you next week.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.